Welcome back to the Citizens channel. I hope you're all staying safe and well. And part of my History Boys features. This is one called City Imports. Yes, a special feature. This is part 1 of 3, guys. So stick with me. Hope you enjoyed part 1, and please seek out the next 2 parts as and when they're available. They could all be available now, depending when you're watching this, of course. City Imports. Yes. Well, what's it about? Well, international players at all English clubs and all foreign clubs now, of course, are hardly rare anymore. But this feature looks at players who came to City at a time when it was a rarity, when it didn't happen too often for any club in England. Of course, some of the bigger clubs, and yes, City were a bigger club in the 70s, 80s, that's for sure, got these players from abroad as and when they could, and it became not a regular thing, but most, it certainly grew and grew as time went by. And some of these players became legends, or mini legends, if you like, but all of them did have an impact, and this is what this series looks at. Today, our player wasn't at City for long, about 27 months, I think, in total. Didn't play a great, vast amount of games for one reason or another, which we'll go into, of course, over these next 3 parts. But he was a legend, certainly in world football, especially in his native country, Poland, and fondly remembered in the US, and, of course, fondly remembered by all the City fans of a certain age here in the UK. So welcome to part 1 of City Imports and the legend Kazimierz DEYNA, or better known to us City fans as Kaziu DEYNA, of course. He was born in Starogard, Gdańsk, Poland on the 23rd of October 1947. He has 6 sisters and 2 brothers. Yeah, I think his 2 brothers were also footballers at certain levels. He was picked up by the Polish Army side. He became a captain, as he had to do to play for the Polish Army side. Legia Warsaw, however you pronounce that. And between 1966 and 1978, he played over 300 games and scored over 90 goals. And only the strict laws in Poland at the time, don't forget the Iron Curtain hadn't dropped by this stage, prevented the Polish World Cup star joining a top European club in the early to mid-70s. No, I'm not talking City as a top European club. We weren't quite doing it in Europe as we should have done. But the Milan clubs were after him. St Etienne, who were massive at the time. Monaco as well. Bayern Munich, who were massive then, massive now. And, of course, Real Madrid actually sent him a shirt with his number on, etc. But it didn't work because, there were still certain restrictions between these Eastern European countries and the rest of Europe and the world, of course. And, of course, he did help break my young teenage heart in October 1973. He was part of that very famous Polish team that drew 1-1 with Wembley with England. Of course, Colin Bell was our top man that night. Couldn't deliver it for us, could he? But he came so close. And, of course, he denied us qualification to the 1970 World Cup, which was pretty devastating for a young teenage lad. I still had a big interest in England at that time. I'd been devastated in the 1970 World Cup, which really did upset me. And this sort of nearly upset me just as much in 1973, this 1-1 draw, obviously the whole country. In that actual World Cup, he did help his national team finish 3rd, came so close to winning that World Cup. And also, he did earn gold and silver medals in Summer Olympics as well. Obviously, the Eastern European teams fielded strong teams in those days in the Olympic Games. And he did earn a gold and a silver medal for his country. And in 1974, he actually finished 3rd in the European Player of the Year award behind, Johan Cruyff and Franz Beckenbauer. So he didn't do too bad, did he? Polish fans loved him. Of course he did. He was voted the Polish Player of the Year on a number of occasions. He'd made over 300 appearances, as I said, and scored over 90 goals for Legia Warsaw. And there's no doubt by 1978, when he moved to City, he had perhaps passed his usefulness. But obviously Poland themselves, the clubs, were taking advantage of these new leniency now. And obviously the money, of course, would always come in handy for any club, especially in Eastern Europe. And it was unfair. I think it was unfair to say past his usefulness. I think he'd been there 12 years. He'd done a lot, but obviously he was then at the age of 30, reaching not the end of his career, because he went on for a long time, which we'll see when we go through this. But there were reasons perhaps why they wanted to lose one of their best assets, and obviously I think more or less it all come down to money. So as the restrictions in Eastern Europe improved, the restrictions on players moving improved, and his coming to City was a bit of a surprise. It certainly was a bit of a coup for City, of course. Because on the 7th of November 1978, City signed DEYNA. City manager Tony Buck was delighted and said so in his Tony Buck Talking column in City's Match magazine on the 11th of November 1978 versus Derby County. I'll just read from a little excerpt from it here, which in this programme. Last Tuesday at lunchtime was a historic moment for my club, and I would suggest without exaggeration for football in this country. It was a very proud occasion for me as I welcomed to Manchester a player who's going to be an important part of City's playing setup in the near future, Kazimierz DEYNA from the Polish club Warsaw. So the Iron Curtain is open in Eastern Europe, and there is now no hitch in sight to the conclusion of his £100,000 signing. I think it was said it between 100 and 120,000, which will become a reality in less than a fortnight's time. It was the first time I'd actually met DEYNA when I greeted him at Manchester Airport, accompanied by his wife Mariola and business advisor Ted Miodonski, who is an American-speaking but Polish-born managing director of a firm in San Francisco, as well as an official from the Polish FA. It was a chaotic lunchtime with Ringway Airport packed by photographers, film crews and reporters, as well as curious fans and onlookers. His signing was fired, imaginations everywhere. Even now, despite his 48-hour stay in our care, I have a lot of talking to do with DEYNA since the opportunity were very limited this week before his return to Warsaw. He must have felt in a whirl, such was the reaction to his appearance and the schedule he had to complete. The priority, of course, was to make him most welcome, but I was also aware of another priority. On Tuesday, I had to dash off with the first team to Norwich in readiness for the League Cup tie we had at Carrow Road on Wednesday night. Although the player flew down to Norwich on Wednesday afternoon with a party of City directors, the exchanges we had, mainly done through the interpreters, were limited. But he seemed pleased to be with us, and when City players had their first real opportunity to shake his hand after the match, I could sense that he acknowledged the warmth of the reception he received and the professional approach of everything we do at City. There you go. DEYNA himself, he was only second, to a Southampton signing. Ivan Golak, remember him, if you guys of a certain age, in being signed from behind the Iron Curtain, this Iron Curtain, this supposed Iron Curtain that was coming down. Buck admitted that DEYNA was signed on the rebound. This is very interesting, guys. City had been pursuing Ozzy Ardiles, but we could only buy him as long as we bought also his mate, Ricky Villa. And it proved a little bit too expensive for City, so we dropped out of that and we signed DEYNA. Oh, the irony. Oh, the thoughts of what might have been, guys? But hey, we got DEYNA. That was all there was to it. So for between 100 and 220,000, DEYNA was a sky blue, and I believe Swales, the chairman, I believe, had to throw in a few electrical goods as well, just to seal the deal with our Polish counterparts. What state was City in at the time? Well, interesting for City. We'd sort of, all through the 70s, of course, we won the League Cup in 1976, of course. We came very close, of course, the season after to winning the league. We'd done okay. Previously in 77, 78, we had been disappointed with a fifth place finish, and that was the sort of heights we were trying to aim for after that League Cup victory. And, of course, a fifth-place finish, season 78-79, at the time of signings, we sat sixth. So it wasn't a disaster, but that was like 13 games into the season. And although we'd only lost 2 games, we'd actually drawn 6. So that was sort of keeping us back a little bit. This was costing us. And Buck, of course, wanted reinforcements and believed DEYNA was key to this. He's more talking about midfield, perhaps, and striker at the time. But obviously that problem would raise its head as we go through this little feature on DEYNA. The fans was totally still behind City. We still had high hopes. We were still one of the best supported teams in the country, as we had been throughout the late 60s and the 70s. And it was Liverpool United, of course, who did dominate the charts, the attendance charts, but it was City and Everton who came next. So we say we're always in the top 4 in that sort of timescale for crowds. We were still in Europe. Yeah, we were just at a UEFA, or looking forward to, or just had the first leg of a UEFA Cup match with the Italian giants AC Milan, and we had a second leg to come, of course, so we were still in the UEFA Cup competition. And DEYNA himself will make his City debut on the 26th of November, just 3 days after City had drawn 2-2 in Milan in that brilliant result for City, where we came so close to winning, which was a very rare thing for English clubs to do over in Italy. Sadly, DEYNA's debut didn't, despite a warm welcome from the City fans, would be a 2-1 defeat at Main Road in front of 38,527 fans against Ipswich. And City was slowly dropping down the league table, which we'd talk about later on again. By mid-December, City sat 15th out of 22, so not great. And DEYNA himself had managed just 2 games. Buck was quick to point out that DEYNA was finding it hard to adapt to English football. Buck said he was struggling with the pace of the game, the physicality, and he needed to make the adjustment. Flipping it, Skip. You'd only featured him in 2 games, so I mean, it was a bit harsh from Tony Buck, but there were perhaps other things as well bubbling under the thing that we didn't really know about. DEYNA would also need to impress a certain new coach that we'd just taken on in early January, Malcolm Allison, of course, as he returned to City. So please join me in part 2. As yes, the early hiccups started to abate a little bit, and DEYNA goes on to hit a little bit of form for City. So please tune back in for part 2 of this City Imports Cashew DEYNA. Thanks for watching, guys. Please, until we meet again, I only ask one thing, don't I? Please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.